All right, so
I'm okay. No, I'm all right.
right, I'll just open up in prayer and then we can start. Thank you, Father, for your kindness, your goodness, and your word and your truth, and your grace for us to access your word. And this wonderful day that we can spend together in peace discussing your truth. Father, elevate us through the word, excite us through your word, and restore us through your word. And Father, also through your spirit, give us the ability to comprehend, the ability to understand the things that are beyond us. Father, I ask it all in the mighty name of Yeshua Mashiach. Amen. All right, so last time we met, we touched on the word Beresheet, and I had a little slide there with an artist and a canvas. Because the word Beresheet is in the beginning. Bereshit bara. Bara means to create. So there was something that happened prior to creation. There was a preparation process, and that's what linked it to the 8th day, which is the day of preparation before the next cycle that's starting. And that day of preparation, or that yom, that time frame, I don't know how long Bereshit was, but it's definitely a time frame. But in the spiritual concept, it doesn't matter because it's outside of time. But for our benefit, for us to understand it, it was like a pause. Something happened before, then there was a Bereshit pause, time of preparation, and then the cycle started. Now, I want to refer to the creation as a cycle because I believe there's multiple cycles. The reason I say that is when he created, there was already something. There was the earth, it was covered with water, there was darkness, the waters of the deep, and his spirit moved over the water. And then he said, let there be light. So what happened prior to that first creation event, which is let there be light? Because that was the first words he spoke to start that new cycle. So hovering over the waters that were there, the darkness and the earth, for whatever state it was in, was part of this Bereshit state. And I believe something happened prior to that. And Yahweh contemplated and prepared himself for starting this new cycle of what he wanted to do, reflecting on the past that happened. And he wanted to continue his work. And as we all know, in Hebrew, time is cyclical. Things repeat in circles, in cycles. The other thing that we know is nature, Hebrew, is holographic. You get in the small, you get the fullness of the great, and the great also have much detail. So if you look at us through a microscope, life itself, the microcosms, and if you zoom in, and if you look at all the things that make up life, it looks just like the universe. Mm-hmm. So the smallest part looks like the big part, and the big part looks like the small part. And the rabbis believe that we are like a universe on our own. Each of us is like a universe in complexity. And because the spiritual realm is beyond time and space, so small and large and infinite, or now, a day, an hour, doesn't mean anything in the spiritual realm. It's all the same thing. So within Yahweh's mind, within his, from where he comes from, those things cross over. And when he started to create, another thing I just want to say before I start is, he created the concept of time on day 4. Prior to that, eternity overshadowed day 1, 2, and 3. When he created day 4, it's like the canopy he put over his creation to contain it. And then within that, he created day 5, 6, and day 7. And we are going to be restored back, and the whole creation process is going to reverse, so to speak, from day 7 back to day 1, where everything is ichat with him. And that's the reverse of the creation, is actually the restoration process. And the other attribute of Yahweh is that whatever is going wrong, he used that as a tool or a means to make it right. He uses the mistake to fix the problem. The solution is within the problem. So whatever you faced at the stage of Bereshit, whatever happened prior to that was the solution for the next cycle, to create the next cycle. So we're part of that cycle of our consciousness within our lifetimes, within 6,000 years of consciousness, experience this cycle through our generations over a 6,000 year period. And we are part of that current cycle. And that current cycle is going to come to an end. And then there's going to be another pause, another Bereshit, where he's going to think about what he's done. And in his nature, he's a God of creation. He always creates. He will never stop creating. And he will start the next cycle. How are we going to be part of that next cycle? I don't know. But we're definitely going to be part. Whatever happens to you in this life, you're going to be different because of this creation process that's taking place in your lifetime within the 6,000 year time cycle period. Yeah, so I'm excited to see what is beyond. And we can only wait and see what is coming. We don't know. And if you look back, you can see a lot of pain, hurt, mistakes, whatever. It does not matter because he will use that for his good. As long as you work with him, he can reform that. He can take the darkness of the deep that is, from our point of view, useless. He can make something beautiful out of it. All he needs is the substance that is you. Put it in his hand and you will make a beautiful thing from that. All right, so that's a bit of an intro on Bereshit, the pause, the preparation of our Creator, Yahweh, standing there waiting to speak the first word. Let there be light. All right, so in the beginning, now the word Bereshit, as you mentioned, contains so much just in that one word. Now, if you break this word up in 3 different ways of expressing it, Bereshit or Barashit, and the third one is Barashit or Barashit. So it's 3 ways of pronouncing the same word. Now, if you remove the bet from Reshit, Bamidbar means in the wilderness. The bet in front of it means in, and then Midbar is wilderness. So the bet actually just means in, and then Reshit is beginning. So the bet indicates it's in the beginning of that time period and the beginning of that new cycle. And if you pronounce it slightly different and you read the first 2 letters together, you get the word bar, that is son. And then you get ashit. And if you put them together, you get in the beginning. But what we see in here is in that beginning was the son. Ashit means I will appoint, and then the bar connected to it, I will appoint a son. So what we see from this Bar Ashit is the gospel message that he will appoint a son in the beginning to start a process. And the appointment, as we learned in the previous Torah cycles, is always about giving you the ability and the anointing, the capability to fulfill a function or a purpose. The word Mashiach only means anointed one or appointed one. And if you are anointed, you need the Spirit in order to be anointed. So you can't be anointed other of yourself. And that appointment gives you the authority to fulfill a function, and it also gives you the ability to be able to fulfill that function. So the appointment of the Son right in the time frame prior to speaking the first creation word was basically appointing the word of Yahweh, which is Yeshua, the Son. And through him, as we also seen previously, he is the Aleph Taf, through whom everything was created. And he was appointed as that Aleph Taf in the time period prior to creation, in that Bereshit moment in time. The next one is Barashit. Sheath come from the variant which is shesh, that is also translated as six. So now we see bara is created and we got six, the word six. Now where this is interesting is that within the first three verses there are six alephs. And aleph, if you pronounce the vowel point slightly different, it's the word elef, that means 1,000. So that basically gives us the insight that there are six alephs, there are 6,000 years within the three first verses. And those six alephs pair and they form 2,000-year periods, which coincide with the ages that we discussed previously. The first age was the age of darkness until Abraham. The second 2,000-year period was the progression and the revelation of his Torah. And the last 2,000 years is the light of Mashiach that will be revealed. So we see the three phases: darkness, words, and light. Those three are the three basic steps or process of creation. And the creation is only fulfilled or finished after the 6,000 years are complete. Now, when we did the previous feast, and specifically the 8th day, we talked about these three ages, and we are moving into the 7th millennium. The 7th millennium is the millennium of rest, and the 8th millennium is the first day of the next cycle. So the completion of this creation will happen in our day, I believe, because we are at the end of that 6,000-year period since he started the cycle.
So we're not in a finished work.
We're not finished yet. Humanity is not yet complete. And humanity is all about, like I said last time, opening up your eyes a little bit more for light, and the more you see. And that's why knowledge will increase. It's the knowledge and revelation of him. We've got so much knowledge now about the Messiah, about his word, than anybody else had ever before, because they were limited. We've got the help of technology. Technology also multiply knowledge across all the continents, across all the peoples. So everybody's got access to this supernatural revelation of knowledge of the Creator and of his word and of him. Everybody, I think, around the world knows about Jesus, knows about the Messiah, whether they believe in him or not. He is revealed. The light has been revealed. Whether they accept or reject him doesn't matter. Truth doesn't need to be accepted for it to be truth. Truth can stand on its own two feet, defending itself. We don't have to believe in it to make it true. You just need the revelation to see it for what it is. And if you don't accept that, then you go for something else, and then you connect yourself to a lie, which has other consequences. So it's fascinating to see the six alephs. I call it the six aleph creation process, where the fullness of his creation will be fulfilled through 6,000 years, through the three ages. Through the bara, the creation process of these six or 2,000 year stages. So if you take all of that and you make your little own translation of it, you can say, in the beginning, Yahweh appointed a son through whom he will actively created man over 6,000 years, whereafter he will complete man in Messiah. So we are small portions of him. The whole aim and purpose of the whole of creation is always about us. And I've got some evidence to prove that. It's not about him creating a garden. He was bored. Oh, what I'm going to do? I'm lonely. Oh, I'm going to create a man. No, it was not like that. He thought about it. I want to create someone like me. What do I need to have in place? I need this, and this. And then he had to put everything in place. Okay, now I've got the whole plan together. And he made that plan in the time called Beresheet. And then he started the whole creation process, which is part of our creation, which involves nature and animals and all those things. It's always about us. And we're going to look at that a bit later on. All right, the creation process has got three basic functions. It's always about creation and separation. Then it's about naming, calling, and speaking. And then it's about creation and filling what was created. Now, when Yahweh created, he created light. He said, let there be light. And then he separated light from darkness. And then he named the light day and the darkness night. So then he spoke. And then he filled those two voids with elements. One is the sun, and the evening was the moon and the stars. And they filled whatever was created and separated. So that's the process that he used. And we see that the two sets of olives over the three or the six olives combined. The first part is the darkness, where there was darkness, and then he created light, and then he separated light from darkness. Then he spoke, and then he created and he named them, and then he filled it. So the darkness, the speaking, and the light, which are the three basic stages of his creation, is also evident through the method of his creation process. Now, what's fascinating here, when I came across this, I wanted to know what's this darkness all about, because that's part of the substance. If you want to build bake a cake, you need dough, you need ingredients. So darkness is one of the ingredients for his creation. So what is within darkness that he used, because I said he used everything, even if it's bad, for good, and he can use it for his benefit. Now, the word darkness is the word choshek, the chet, shin, kaf. Now, for you guys who've been with me a while will know that each one of those letters have a meaning. Chet means life, shin is fire or light, or it can be spirit, it's a spiritual energy force, and kaf means hand. But when you read the meaning of this word choshek, it means a place of darkness, Hades, underground prison, and a place where treasures are hidden in darkness. So then immediately it linked to me. The parable of the field. He bought a field because there's a treasure in the field. The substance or the elements called the waters of the deep and the earth that was covered by the waters contained a treasure. And he wanted to extract the treasure to bring it back to life. So something happened before that, entrapped something very valuable in there. And the whole purpose of his creation is to extract that back and restore it back unto him. So darkness, as I said, consists of the three words. So we have chet, so there's life embedded in the darkness. There's a spiritual energy, sin, embedded in the darkness. And there's a kaf. Kaf means hand. And it also implies that action is required. So in its dormant state, it doesn't have anything in itself. But if you put your hand to it, you can revive whatever is still in there. So the gem that is within there sits within the shin and the chet. And the action is the kaf to do the work in order to extract that. Now, what's interesting, when I read he separated the light from the darkness, and I said, oh, but choshek has got light in it, the shin. What if I take the shin out of the word choshek? What will I get? Because he separated it. So what was left when he took the shin out? The word chak, that means mouth, also means taste. And that word comes from the word that's connected to the word chaka, that means fish hook. So immediately jump to the New Testament, fishes of men, the function of catching someone like a fish in the mouth, pulling them out of the waters of the deep, putting them in the boat, which is a symbol of salvation, is basically the gospel message written in the word darkness. Only the word darkness contained the whole gospel message, because we got the revelation of what Yeshua taught through his parables, and it's found in one word. So what is within the darkness? I'm going to jump to a slide to keep this thought. I'm going to jump back to it again. Now, this is the picture of the waters of the deep. We've got the shin, the spirit of Yahweh, move over the waters. We've got the Shamayim, which is heaven. We've got Mayim, that's earth, and that's the waters below and the waters above that were separated as well. And we've got the word Choshek, darkness, in the lower parts here. So when I did the last study on Bereshit, I started the prophet cycle. And all the prophets linked to creation comes from the book of Isaiah. And Isaiah's name means salvation of Yah, salvation of Yahweh. So creation is connected to salvation, or creation is a salvation process. Who needs to be saved? When he started the first word, let there be light, he spoke it to save someone. And where were they? So the previous waters of the deep, what I believe, contains the souls or the gems of the previous cycle. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm going to go back now. I need to build a case here. There's a lot of words that link to that. Just jumping quickly to the end to hold that thought. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, heretics brings to mind. It would challenge a lot of the body of Christ, what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I don't see any. It's certainly something that's you investigate because it's there.
Yes.
It's in the word.
It's in the word.
Faith without works is dead. So to have faith, you've got to implement a certain amount of energy. Like you were talking about, if you want to get the jewel, you've got to work and
Put your hand to it.
You've got to get your hand to it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't get your hand to it, no, you're not going to get a thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, as you were saying earlier on, technology as such today, no man has a single excuse to be able to say, I haven't heard. Because creation, it says creation itself testifies of his glory and what he does.
Yeah.
Wherever you look.
So I'm going to
If
present.
you look in any direction.
Yes.
Honestly, look in any
Look
direction.
at your child.
You see evidence of God everywhere.
Yeah.
It's, the scripture that talks about, it's the, what's it, of God to conceal a thing and for us to search it out.
Yes.
Yes.
The word of God
Is in darkness, isn't it? If something's concealed, then it's not in your light, so it's that same idea. So, and then the more you search, it's more efficient.
With the creation, we know from the scriptures of Isaiah that there was a previous cycle.
Yeah. They call it the pre-Adam world.
Yeah. So, rightly speaking, that cycle was ended with a flood.
Yeah.
Adam's cycle was ended with a flood.
Yeah.
And when you really come to think of it being the third cycle now,
Yeah.
that's
And it started with the flood.
it's a cycle, it just keeps going.
Yeah. So I'm going to present my second witness to back this up, and it's found in the word. No, thank you. Image. We were created in his image. Now that word image will reveal the same concept. I only stumbled on this part when I reviewed my notes just before coming here. I put this together. It actually stimulated my thoughts when I looked at the creation of man. So this is the word image. This is the actual thing that started the whole thought process. Genesis 1:26-27, and Elohim said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over the cattle and over the earth and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So Elohim created man in his own image. In the image of Elohim, he created him. Male and female created he them. Now what you can note from verse 27 is he never created them in the likeness. The likeness was the plan. The reality in that point of time was only the image that was completed, not the likeness. He wanted to create them in the image and the likeness, and then he repeats, in his image he created them. He did not say, and he created them in his likeness. So likeness is the 6,000 year process. The image was that point in time when he created them. So the creation of humanity is not yet complete because the likeness has not been fulfilled yet.
It's fairly obvious.
Very obvious. So that confirms the 6
Because we
Aleph.
are going to receive glorified bodies, and when we receive glorified bodies, we will see him as he is,
And we will be like him.
and we will be like him.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's another bit of evidence. Now, image is the word tzalim. Tzadik lamet mem. It comes from the root word tel, that means shadow. So this is an interesting thing. An image is a shadow.
Let us make man in our image. Pause. After our likeness. After what? 6,000 years.
Yeah.
Right, okay. It's right there in front of you the whole time.
So the little Hebrew wordplay that I want to highlight here is that the word tzalim have a mem in it. The word tzal is only tzalek tzadik lamet without the mem. So if you want the image, you need the shadow and water to create an image. That's a recipe to create an image. To have a shadow, you need light to cast something. So you need light, you need water, you have a shadow, and then you have the image. So image does not exist in itself. He didn't just do something. He had to say, let there be light. For the shadow to exist, the waters was already there. So what shadows was cast in the water with the light that's been switched on? And these shadows are humans because they're in the image of Yahweh. The other thing that we need to think about is we consist of 70% water. We are the mem as well. So if I've got a little picture there of a human that is made up by water only. Now a shadow is something that you can see through. If there's a tree, there's grass, you can see the grass through the shadow. It's like it's see-through, but it's there. Water is the same. If you have a water body, you can see through it, you can see something beyond, but it's there. So water in the form of anything is just like a shadow.
And if you look at, and if you understand the atomic composition of all matter, including our bodies, there is space.
Yeah.
We're basically space with a few dots of.
And what's a shadow? The shadow is nothing.
Yeah. So you can see through the space as well.
Yeah, so we see through as well from atomic point of view. Yeah. So that just comes from this word tzalim, tzalim, and tel. That's a shadow. So a three-dimensional shadow made up of water can be unstable and can be distorted. I thought about it the other day. Within Yahweh's creation, water, air, and nature can be polluted and distorted. But the forces behind it is still untouched. Wind can still blow pollution around. Wind is sacred. It's the force. But the medium can be corrupted. In the same way, you can be distorted and corrupted. Being a sinful being, he can still use you because his force that works through you is pure. In the same way, our waters are polluted, our waters are distorted, but we still hold the perfect image of the Creator. And He can still use us in spite of that. So, in summary, man consists of a shadow and water. And if you think about that, when we look at the water of the darkness that's in the deep, you might as well make the connection to say that the waters of the deep contained the shadows of water captured in it, the gems that are entrapped in it, that needs to be rescued. Now, that's true from a spiritual point of view. I don't know whether it's a physical reality point of view, but looking at the cycles and the patterns and all that, you can make an assumption. So what I said earlier is my interpretation. I don't say it's exactly like that. I just made the analogy or the assumption that I believe that there are things precious entrapped in the waters of the deep prior to creation. And if you look at the image of man exists within water, and it's formed by his light casting a shadow or an outline of his image within that water. And the water contained life. The het from that word for darkness.
Against what Jesus constantly saying, or Yeshua is constantly saying, I am the living water.
Yeah. He's the
Drink of
perfect
me.
image.
Yes, drink of me.
How can he say that?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Because this is his way of thinking.
When he met the woman at the well, he said, I will give you water, living water.
Yeah.
You will never thirst again.
Yeah. And his water is not polluted or distorted in any way.
Pure.
It's pure. So this is the spiritual way of expressing the creation of man. The shadow, light, and water. Now in the physical form, the creation of man is expressed through ground, earth, and breath. So you see the two parts of man being created. Now when Yahweh created man, he formed him from the earth and he breathed into his nostrils and man became a living soul. That breath is the word ruach. So the medium which Yahweh uses to express himself is breath and light. The spiritual form is the light that casts the shadow, which is also the letter Hey. It is also the letter Shin. Shin means fire, and Hey means light as well. And Ruach, breath, is also the letter Hey, which is the sound of breath. So now you see the two mediums that the Spirit express himself is also the two mediums that's used here to express the creation of man. The one on the spiritual backdrop, which is the shadow, the light, and the water, and the one on the physical one is the soil and the ground and the breath. But they're all in this one and the same thing. They're just in different mediums, expressed in different mediums. What's fascinating here is that Yahweh used the ground to form man. What's the word for ground or earth? Adamah. So where do you see Adam? You see him already in the ground. Where did the ground come from? It was under the water. In Beresheet time frame. It was covered. So Adam was entrapped in the earth that was covered by the water before he spoke light. Adam was already in there. And you see the same concept here. When I remove the shin, I got the fish hook in the mouth. When you remove the hay, which is the same as the shin light. You separated the light from the darkness. In the medium of soil, Adam pops out.
I remember when I was at school, we did art, and one of the famous sculptors, I don't know which one is it, they say they see a block of clay, that they see the thing trapped in the clay. And just
Yes, that's it.
chisel it away. Same thing. Same thing, yeah.
So it's fascinating. So we saw the shadow within the image. Now we see Adam in the earth, the ground that was covered by the water, and the spirit moved over the water and the Adamah to do the separation. Now the creation process, as I said, had separation in it. Separation for the purpose of separating the entrapped ones underneath whatever is covering them. And what covered them is the imperfection of whatever happened prior to Beresheet, whatever that looked like. And I believe our souls are eternal. I don't think you can kill a soul. A soul will live forever. In saying that, with the Hebrew mindset, your soul existed way beyond before. And it came from Yahweh.
It's the natural way to say that energy can't be destroyed, it can only be transformed into another form.
So our creation in this cycle is a refinement of who we are as humanity. So whatever I looked like previously when I existed in the mind of the Father, when he expressed me in a medium of some sort, prior to whatever, was still a state of imperfection. And I have to go through this new cycle to be perfected. And we've got prophecies to say what my new perfected state will look like after this cycle. And maybe there's another one after that to refine me even further.
Again, you go back to Revelation.
Yeah.
Why the souls that sinned were in the lake of fire. If the souls died, if you just died like a dog, why are the souls in the fire? Why are those angels in prison?
Let me show you that. I'll show you the lake of fire quickly. Let's just make the connection here. You see the darkness? It's got a shin in it. Shin is fire. And this is the word for Hades as well. So where's hell? It's darkness. The shin is the fire of purification that's burning. In the darkness, that's entrapping the treasures that contains Yahweh's life still. And he wants to separate them from the entrapment of darkness, bring them into the light. That's the purpose of his words. His first word of creation, let there be light. He wants to separate us from darkness into light. That is the sole purpose of creation, is to bring all life that's entrapped into the light where he is, to become echad with him, because he is not in darkness. He is not darkness.
That does that thing that, I don't know if
Out
we're
of
studying
darkness
the
into the light, that's salvation.
That's salvation. And that's separation, that's creation.
Come out of darkness.
Actually, I'm listening to you about Yahweh.
This is deep.
Savior of all.
See, this is deep.
Savior of all. And he explains a little bit about this as well.
Yeah.
So I'm doing this keep me awake.
Yeah. No, don't worry.
I don't want to miss anything.
But it's from the fire that comes from the
Yeah.
throne, from the throne of Yahweh, from himself. Very interesting. Says your words like a fire shut up in my bones. That's right.
There's so much wrapped up in the word that we haven't even hit the surface yet.
We're just talking about one word, darkness, actually. An image. That's it. 2 words.
Haven't even scratched the surface. The one that says his ways are far above our ways and his thoughts are way above our ways. We'll never get to understand him.
But this gives us some idea of the questions we can't answer now. Just a hint. I don't say it's the truth or it's accurate, but there's something there that fits the pattern. There's something, and because I trust the Hebrew language so much, I cannot look beyond this. Yeah.
Without understanding Hebrew, you cannot understand the word. That's why the church is lost.
You can't understand the Father. You can't understand the
You
Son.
can't understand the wedding. You can't understand what it's all about, what salvation was all
You
about.
can't understand your purpose. You can't understand yourself.
Because it is light. That is, and without the light, you can't. You're going to get distortion. I love that, you know, how it says, I mean, kids are, you know, naturally afraid of a lot of kids are afraid of the dark. At the same time, in the New Testament, it says men love darkness. Yes. So it's interesting too, isn't it? Yeah.
And this also describes a womb.
Yes.
Babies in water in darkness. There's a hand that helps the process to hook them out, so to speak, bring them into the light. Same process. And the birth process is the creation process, and the birth of humanity takes 6,000 years.
As a matter of fact, if a woman can't, if the waters of the woman don't break, they actually took a hook to break the waters. You know that? To break the waters. Looks like a hook.
Okay. So that was image. Likeness is the word demuth. The first two letters makes the word dam, that means blood. The last three letters makes the word muth, that means death. So how do you become in his likeness? Only through his death and his blood, his work. But we're also supposed to walk in his halakha. And he said, if they persecuted me, they will persecute you. If they killed me, they will kill you. His likeness is a very difficult road to walk on. It involves pain, character building. Why? We need to release ourselves from this world of darkness that we embrace so much, that we love so much. Nobody in the world currently, I'm not talking about believers, want to be taken out of the waters of the deep into the light. They don't want it. They're comfortable in their little womb of darkness. They're a gem, they have life, but they want to stay there. Just like Israel went into captivity, into Babylon. They didn't want to go back when the opportunity arose. They wanted to stay in Babylon. Oh, we like it here.
And you know too, when you take Jesus, when he was gave up the ghost, Roman soldier came, pushed the spear in his side. What came out? Water and blood.
Yes.
Cleansing and renewal, because the blood had to be offered on that altar.
Yeah, and blood's also life. Yeah.
I tell you, salvation, people don't understand salvation. It's such an important thing.
Yeah.
And that the word blood is it's associated with Adam.
Adam, yeah.
And the earth, the blood. And I think, isn't it the first one that's mentioned in the beginning? He said the blood
Quiet.
cried out on
Yeah.
the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. From Adamah. Yeah.
Yeah. The dam.
That was Cain. Abel.
Abel. Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating. So Adam, if you take the word blood, dam, and you connect it to the Aleph, you get Adam. And we know that the Aleph represents Yahweh himself. So in order to create man, he had to die and give blood. Now, if you think about it, if you've got a little project and it's very hard to do and very complex, you normally say, I'll pour my blood and tears into this, you know? It's a major effort to make something that complex. In the same way, the Creator had to give his blood, his everything, in order to create humanity. That's why I made that statement earlier on. The whole of creation, the garden and the fish and the birds and all that, that's not what it's about. It's about creating someone like him in its image and his likeness, and all the other things had to be created to sustain humanity for 6,000 years until the process is complete. And the whole festival cycle is about pouring his blood and his life into Adam, so to speak. So without the death of Yeshua, without his blood being poured out, humanity cannot be completed. So it's not only, I always had in my mind, he created Adam and Eve, or Adam and Chava perfect in the garden, and then Adam stuffed up, and Chava stuffed up. And then he said, oh, don't worry about it, I've got a plan. Plan B, my plan A was to make it perfect, plan B is I'll fix it. No, the fall of man is part of creation.
And it makes absolute sense, because he wanted to create a creature with free will.
Yeah, free will is the key.
Perfection is
To
free
love.
will.
Yeah.
If there's no free will, there's no perfect creature.
There's no image, there's no likeness.
Yeah.
So that's why he planted the tree in the garden. That
He
they
knew
were-
what would happen.
He wanted to give them choice. If there was no choice, they couldn't have made a mistake. And without choice, you cannot choose to love him. Otherwise, you're just like an angel or robot, whatever. You're programmed to serve him. What fun is there in that?
But
Nothing.
even the angels had a choice, because that's why Lucifer fell
Yeah.
through that followed him. They also had a choice.
Yeah.
You think they were made perfect, being angels?
Yeah.
I think their perfection is based on their exposure and revelation of who he is in the spiritual realm. They had a lesser chance to fall because they see him the way he is. For us, he's hidden. He's hidden in,
Just faith.
yeah, it's just faith. Yeah, so going blind is part of the process in order to see. You need to crawl before you can walk, before you can run. So we need to go through all these processes in order to be perfected. The creation of man. So Genesis 2:7, and Yahweh Elohim formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. Now that breath of life is the word nashama, and that means blast, inspiration, spirit, and soul. So basically, it is a spiritual soul. Living being is the word nefesh, which is the same word that is used for animals, which is translated as soul. So the difference between humans and animals is we have two souls, they have one. We've got a physical soul, which is your personality, your likes, dislikes, and all of that. And your neshama is your soul that connects with him, the soul that sits above the physical, that reach out towards the spiritual, that's got that awareness. And that neshama is linked to the glory that covered Adam and Eve in the garden. And when they sinned, their nakedness was exposed. And they lost the glory. And you can see the flesh. Only the nefesh, the neshama disappeared. So that's why part of the restoration process, after Yeshua died, the first thing he said, I will give you my spirit, my ruach, my breath of life. to restore the neshama within Adam, his people. And that happened 4,000, 5,000 years after creation. That was the time to breathe into man. So just look at how man was created on day 6. I believe if you look at the time frame, Yeshua came roughly between the 4th and 5th millennium. And probably on day 4 or 5, he was playing in the ground, forming man. And just prior to day 6, he breathed. And on day 6, Adam rose up from the earth when he breathed into him. So there was preparation, forming man in the ground, day 4 and 5 when he made the animals and all that. And then he breathed, and day 6, it came to life. So there was a Beresheet process for humans as well, for Adam as well, before he received that breath of life. And then he was a living soul, a neshama. So us being in his image is only fulfilled when we receive his ruach. We are not perfect without his spirit, but then there's a part missing. We still need a renewed body. We are entrapped. We're under the canopy of time. We need to be released from this, or we need a hybrid body that can exist in the physical and the spiritual. And that's the last step to renew us. So he renew the inside first, the neshama. He restore that with his spirit. Then he give us a new body so that we can exist in his presence. Because in the physical sense, the way we are now, we cannot stand before him because he's like a consuming fire. He is dangerous if you stand in front of him. I want to give you a little testimony. I think I told Harry and Sarah already. Back in the day, I don't know what we watched or whatever, but this preacher claimed to had close encounters with God. So I prayed I wanted one too. He's not an acceptor of persons, so surely he can do that for me. So I prayed that for a couple of evenings. And then one evening I had a dream. And I dreamt that one of my friends sat next to me on the bed and we were praying. And I told him, his name was Saki. I said, "Yo, Saki, it feels like God's presence is here." And he said, "Yes, I can feel that." And at that moment, I woke up and I felt the presence of Yahweh like electricity going through my body. And I begged him to go away because I couldn't deal with it. It was too much for me. And then he gradually moved away, and I experienced the most awesome peace, and I saw the most beautiful colors and experienced just the wonderful pleasantness of his presence without his intense fire kind of presence that's dangerous to the physical. And that really gave me a understanding of how great he is. If we say, "I want to come into your presence," we say it loosely. You don't know what it's like. You think he's just an old man sitting on a chair with a little stick in his hand. He is the ultimate of all energy, of all power. The whole universe exists because of him. The awesomeness of the sun, all the energy that exists in the universe comes from him. And if you stand, it's like a nuclear reactor. If you go to the core of the reactor, that's what it's like. You will be gone in an instant. You'll just go up in smoke, so to speak, in your current body. So just like your eyesight needs to gradually be renewed, your body needs the same. So that's what the likeness is about, the holiness thing. Holiness is, he said, "Be holy, I'm holy," and he's like a consuming fire. So our holiness is to prepare ourselves in order to stand before him because he wants a relationship with us. Holiness is not to get into heaven. Holiness is to stand before him and keep standing. I think there's a scripture in, I don't know which book it is, maybe Luke. Don't know who said it, but he said that you will be tested as through fire, and anything that's not from him will be consumed like stubble and whatever. And only what is pure will remain. So if there's a little speck that is good, that is you, that's only that will exist. All the other things will be gone. But that little spark of life, that's you, that's from him, that's still good, will exist. That's why he will not destroy his creation. He will destroy the things that holds them back. He will destroy the darkness that surrounds them. So he can separate that beautiful gem, that treasure, from the darkness of the waters of the deep.
Yes.
I've had this analogy in my mind for some time in that I liken it to a cancer consuming the body. Cancerous cells consuming the body, that you can only tolerate it to a certain point, and then you have to act, or it it kills the whole thing. I see God acting in the same way. He will wait till the very last minute when there's no possibility of anyone else getting saved without the whole of creation collapsing.
Yeah.
And then he will act, and it will happen quickly, and that'll be it.
Yeah.
Look, don't you think that also with, when you're talking about clean and unclean, with the fall, man became unclean. And nothing that's unclean will stand before the Lord. We made of the dust of the earth. Basically, it's unclean stuff. That is the reason that we could never stand before him, because if he appeared in your presence, you would just fall like a dead man to the ground. You take the prophets, what the prophet said, depart from me, I am unworthy, I'm
Yeah.
So really speaking, one doesn't, I think it's because we're human, we can't conceive in our minds the holiness and the purity of our Lord and our Messiah. Really, we don't understand it. That's why we've got no fear.
Yeah, and we love to be unclean. We love this unclean world. We've grown used to it. But those who have a little grasp of what is beyond will long for purification, for cleanness, because then you can be in his presence.
How many testimonies have you got where people are serving in the Okal and they're going through the rituals and suddenly they're approached and the guy falls to the ground and he pleads to God to save him, and God saves him, and he gets up and he preaches the word. Testimonies like that from darkness.
Yeah.
That when that light comes in, no darkness stands. I don't care where you are, what you are, that darkness gets out. When the light comes in, the darkness gets out.
Yeah, that's right. What the hell is this? All right, so one of my favorite passages is Ephesians 1. I don't know what happened here. This is a bit sketchy. Let me just quickly get out of here. I don't know how. Anyway, I'll read through it. So when I read this passage of Ephesians 1, this was the passage I studied when I was a young believer. And this was really ringing true to me. I don't know why. I was so attracted to this passage, where Paul said, "May the grace and spiritual peace be yours from God our Father and from the Master Yeshua the Messiah. May blessing be to the God and Father of our Master Yeshua the Messiah, who has blessed us in Messiah with every spiritual blessing in the heavenly realm. Even as in his love, he chose us in Messiah before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy, consecrated, and set apart for him, and blameless in his sight, even above reproach before him in love. So there we see, before the foundation of the earth, he chose us. Before he said, let there be light, I existed. Where was I? When I read this, it just stimulated that same thought. For he foreordained us to be adopted and revealed as his own children through Yeshua the Messiah, in accordance to the purpose of his will, so that we might be to the praise and the commendation of his glorious grace, which he so freely bestowed on us in the beloved. In him we have redemption, deliverance, and salvation through his blood, the remission and forgiveness of our offenses, in accordance with his riches and his generosity of his gracious favor, which he has lavished upon us in every kind of wisdom and understanding. So there we see the blood, there we see salvation, and the salvation is the separation process. He wants to separate us from the darkness because he has chosen us, and not chosen me and not you. He's chosen all of us. We all have the potential to be saved. There's no I don't know what the word is. There's people who believe it. Predestination or whatever. That certain people are earmarked to burn, the others are earmarked to be saved. There's nothing like that. Everybody is chosen to be saved. It's your choice whether you want to accept that gift or not.
That's the whole point, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not like
Choice.
any man should perish, but all should.
Yeah. And every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. So that's still part of that. Making known to us the mystery and the secret of his will. And what's the mystery of his will? In accordance with his good pleasure, which he had previously purposed and set forth in him, he planned for the maturity of the time and the climax of the ages to unify all things and head them up and consummate them in Messiah, things in heaven and things on the earth. That's the mystery. He wants to unify us back unto him. He wants to bring us out of darkness into the light because he is in the light. And that's the mystery. And the mystery is, it's for all of us. And then he said, verse 11, in him we also were made Yahweh's heritage, his portion, and we obtained an inheritance, for we had been foreordained, chosen, and appointed before in accordance with his purpose, who works but everything in agreement with the counsel and design of his own will, so that we who first hope in Messiah, who first put our confidence in him, have been designed and appointed to live for the praise of his glory. In him you also have heard the word of truth and glad tidings, the gospel of your salvation, and have believed in and adhered and relied on him, were stamped with the seal of the long-promised Holy Spirit. So there we see the restoration of the neshama, the breath. And then he said, that spirit is the guarantee of our inheritance, the first fruits and pledge, and the foresight and the down payment on our heritage in anticipation of its full redemption and our acquiring complete possession of it. So there's a full redemption that still need to happen, and acquiring the complete possession of it. That's that final creation and the final restoration that need to take place, to the praise of his glory. For this reason, because I've heard of your faith in Master Yeshua and your love toward him and all the saints, I do not cease to give thanks to you, making mention of you in my prayers. For I always pray to the God of our Master Yeshua the Messiah, the Father of glory, that he may grant you a spirit of wisdom and revelation, of insight into the mysteries and secrets, and the deep and intimate knowledge of him, by having the eyes of your heart flooded with light, so that you can know and understand the hope to which he has called you, how rich is his glorious inheritance in the saints, and so that you can know and understand what the immeasurable and unlimited and surpassing greatness of his power in and for us who believe, as demonstrated in the working of his mighty strength, which he has exerted in Messiah when he raised him from the dead and seated him at his own right hand in the heavenly places. So this was my prayer at the beginning, that he may grant us the ability to understand, so he can flood our minds with the fullness of his revelation, because we won't be able to comprehend it, even if we try. And even if he tells us the fullness of his glory, we will not believe it, because it will blow our minds. May he take away the bondage from our minds, so we can grasp the fullness of him and the revelation of his truth. I'm open for that, and I dare you to be open for that as well, because only then he can pour his light in you. If you hold back, if you're conservative, clinging to your doctrines of darkness, he cannot fill you with light. You need to empty yourself from the filth, from the uncleanness, from all the things that you cling to that give you security in a religion. It's not about the religion. It's always about him. It's about his light, and you are his inheritance, and he wants to take you out of that dark place and bring you into the light where he is. Just allow him. That's all you have to do. Just allow him. And he will do a wonderful work, because he's got the power to resurrect you regardless of where you are. Regardless of your darkness, he will pull you out of that dark place. The same way you resurrected Yeshua from the dead, he can pull you from the deepest sinful pit that you currently find yourself in, from the depression, from death that take hold of you. He can resurrect you from that, because he's got the power. He's done it before. He can do it again. In the same way, may he reveal his truth to you in such a powerful way that you will radiate like Moses' face, just living and walking, and people will see his glory as you walk in his image and his likeness, carrying his truth without boundaries or limits. May he grant you that.
Yes.
Far above all rule and authority and power and dominion, and every name that is named, above every title that can be conferred, not only in this age and in this world, but also in the age and the world which are to come. Now, Paul said this about us. We are that age, the climax of the age. He spoke about us, and his power of his revelation of truth will be revealed to us. And that is what revival is about. It's the revival of truth.
So we have, it's an interesting relationship, because he is the author and the finisher of our faith.
Yeah.
We're born of incorruptible seed.
Yes.
But we can't simply abdicate. It's not like the greasy grace thing. Oh, okay, so I just...
No.
Pray the prayer now and then.
No. It's he's created us to engage in him in a relationship which is an unfolding process. Yeah.
Cycles, cycles,
Yeah.
week after week. And like Philip said, when the Swiss cheese holds the line.
Make contact. I dare you.
Little drops of glory come down. That's,
Yeah.
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 Don't you know why the enemy wants to take control of the mind? Eh?
Yeah.
Because if he can take control of the mind, that's everything. He's destroyed you. He's literally destroyed you. That's why this attack, all these AI attacks on the mind to make him dumb to what's coming on.
Yeah, and government means to govern the mind.
Yes.
It's to control the mind.
And all the television, all the subliminal effects and the indoctrination of rubbish.
And you watch a program that's been busy programming you.
I don't know how it sort of relates sometimes. But our plumber who was an SBA, we've had lots of interesting conversations, but he sent a link to a video that Volker Weick has done, breaking down the Pope's latest encyclical. And I found it, I mean, a lot of the stuff we already know, the most obvious, but what I found really interesting, and I've never really knew, I knew all about the Jesuits, I knew all of those links, but he read from a book, what's it called? Oh, something, Ecclesiastical Megalomaniacs or something like that. And what it does, it goes right back to a plan of action born out of the 1700s that the Pope is now bringing to fruition.
Okay.
And that is the whole thing of, interestingly, I don't know if you picked up with this Pope, he's not into evangelism.
Yeah.
Jesus is love, God is love.
Yes.
So it's all about uniting all faiths
Yes.
under one umbrella.
It's the white horse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about creating equality,
Yes.
and we can't have equality if no one owns anything.
Yes.
So it's the abolition of property.
So it's not a sin to take something, if you have a need, then it's not a sin to take somebody else's property. If you have a need of it, then
It becomes yours legally.
it becomes yours legally.
Yeah.
You should say,
Yeah, that's what it made me think of, yes.
what I had found interesting was that I knew that he was a Jesuit, the first Jesuit Pope. But my assumption was that he was taking the Catholic Church in a different direction. But what this shows is his encyclical lines up with a whole lot of other popes' encyclicals, and this is their whole plan of action. They want to restore the control that the church had in the Middle Ages. That's what they want to do.
It's interesting it's called encyclical.
And
Yes, what has disciples. Yes.
that's the big thing is pushing for now. Did you read that thing?
Sunday law.
Yes.
Wow, that's nice.
It's all part of
So,
it, yes.
who sent you that one?
His name's Terry Payton.
Will you send that to us?
Sure, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm just going to finish this last verse and then we can take a break. Far above all rule, authority, power, dominion, and every name that is named, above every title that can be conferred, not only in this age, but also in the world, but also in the age in the world which are to come. And he has put all things under his feet and appointed him the universal and supreme head of the assembly, which is his body, the fullness of him who fills all and all. For in that body lives the full measure of him who makes everything complete and who fills everything everywhere with himself. So, and that last statement is for my next, setting the stage for the next slide. So let's take a break and then we can...
A very, very powerful attack on the mind that's coming to the whole world.
Yeah, the battleground is the mind. And the other thing is, Israel was in bondage in Egypt. We are in bondage in Babylon. Babylon means mixing and confusion. And that's where we're at. We're in the system where we are confused and humanity is confused. And that's why the only sanity is God's word. Yeah, they exchange things. Yeah. All right, before I go to the next one, I just want to quickly jump back. I forgot to say something that's very important. The 6 Alephes, the first 2 Alephes are found in verses 1 and 2 that has to do with darkness. The second 2 Alephes has to do where Yahweh speak, verse 3. And the last 2 Alephes are in verse 3 that has to do with let there be light. So just think about it. We've got darkness, we've got light, and we've got words in the middle. I'm going to quickly jump forward to the end before I go back to where I want to be, just to give you a bit of a... Here is the first verse in Genesis 1 verse 1. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim va'et ha'eretz. And what you can see here, we've got a beginning, we've got words, the Aleph Taf, and then we've got Nent. In the same way, in the beginning was the darkness, and the Spirit moved over the earth, and then bara, let there be light, where he started to speak, which is the Aleph Taf. And then whatever's on the left is what the light revealed, is the heavens and the earth. Now, what Paul said to us is that we will be restored back and reunited with him because we are his inheritance, which is to do with Shamayim. We are currently entrapped into Eretz, but he created both. The one is a stepping stone for the other. And we are now in the process of being elevated. And the major thing is, on the two opposites, you have darkness and light, and in the middle you have words. What we know about the Torah, about his word is, it's still creation words that's been spoken to us on a weekly basis as we study the Torah. And as you receive those creation words, he's creating inside of you. And what is removed? Darkness. What is separated? You are separated from the bondage that's in you, and you are then taken into the light. As you grasp it, as you get a revelation, that's light. And as you act on the light, then you start to walk in his likeness. Not only his image, because we're all created in his image. All right, so just moving back to my other slide here. All right, so salvation is the main theme of creation, is salvation. So when Yahweh decided to create, he actually decided, I'm going to save. And the whole creation process is the salvation process. What we read, what Paul said, we were chosen before the foundation of the earth. Before he created everything, we existed. And we needed salvation because we are entrapped in something. And what we learned from this word choshek, darkness, is that we are in a state of being entrapped. We have life, and we have the potential to be taken out of it, but his hand needs to go in there. And what happened when Yeshua died? What did he do? He went into Sheol and he preached to them. What did he do? He spoke in the dark place, spoke into the darkness. He brought life, and then he separated. So he elevated them from that darkness in the spiritual, of course. So the purpose of salvation is for Yahweh to speak into every dark place that ever existed prior to creation. And when he started, there was a place where there was darkness, and he spoke into it. Yeshua did the same. He spoke into the place of darkness. And Hades and Sheol or whatever is exactly the same word, choshek, that he went to speak in that dark place. So we must allow him to speak into our own dark places. And we've all been there. We've all sinned, some of us more than others. But we all have the potential to be resurrected and separated from this stronghold of darkness that's holding us down, for his creation process to be completed in us. If you ever think about it, why do I sin? I was born into this world. I'm a victim. I was born a victim. I was born with a handicap. I was prone to sin. That's unfair. Why did I do that? I don't know. There was something in me that caused me to do that. I had a handicap of some sort. Some people have more than others. And now we sit and judge one another. It's not your place to judge. It's your place to find your darkness and allow him to speak light and life into your darkness so that you can be separated from it. That's your job. Leave other people alone. It's not your place to tell or to speak into other people's lives. Allow him to speak into them. Hey? Yeah, that's your job. Pray for us. That's how you speak into their darkness. It's through him.
Aren't we allowed to bring correction?
Yeah, according to the word. If you
Yeah.
see a brother doing something wrong, of course, we help one another.
Yeah, because what you just said is used by the grace. We're not fruit inspectors. We're not fruit inspectors. It's not our job to inspect fruit.
Now we're going to look at, in a bit, the creation of a true prophet. And we're going to see what a true prophet's supposed to do. We all got the anointing of a prophet. So we're going to see what that is, and that will highlight that profound statement.
It's amazing that when Christ rose out of what's that, he led captivity captive. He brought them out of darkness into the light. They were seen in the light of Jerusalem, or walking the streets of Jerusalem.
To set captives free.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, amazing. All right, so what we see here expressed through his creation process is blood, dam, is death, move, and to speak the words in order to reveal light into those dark places. So in saying that, that's what Paul was saying. He fills everything everywhere with himself. God is light. When he turns up, darkness disappears. And he needs to go into the darkest places, even into death himself, in order to shine light there, to separate, to do that creation process, and to set those captives free that are entrapped into this dark place. So, creation of a prophet. Now, the prophets, as you can see, there's the half Torah readings for this first Torah portion, Beresheet. And as I said, Isaiah means salvation of Yah. In the context of creation, it's all about creating light, speaking light. Now, the first one is the servant, a light to the nations. That's a prophecy. A light to the nations. That's exactly the same theme that we just spoke about. The servant, of course, is the one who gave himself to serve others with his own life. And that's the evidence of the work of Messiah. So when Yahweh created, he spoke everything into existence. And Yahweh created a prophet's role to speak through a person whom he anointed into other people's lives and into situations. So they then take on the function of the creator themselves. So a prophet is like a little creator, a little anointed creator. And he speaks life in darkness to bring them into light. Same pattern applies. Now, Isaiah 42 verse 1 to 9 reveal a bit more about what does a prophet do. He says, "Here is my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him, and he will bring justice to the nations, and he will not shout or cry out or raise his voice in the street." Now, servant is the word ebed. It means servant of Israel. It also means worshipper, and it's also in subject to the authority of a king. So the emphasis of this is basically on three levels. If you look at a servant, because they go out to the nations, they serve, and they also serve Yahweh in the form of worshiping. So a true prophet recognizes authority. They recognize Yahweh's authority to the point of worshiping him. That's their first calling. The second calling is to serve other people. So when you see a prophet nowadays, they always elevate themselves above the people. They're never servants. A true prophet will always serve people, and he will speak words to help the people. He will speak truth to help them.
Not foretell the future.
Not tickling the ear, not foretell the future, not to tell them what they want to hear.
Interesting, isn't it? That statement, he will not shout
in the streets.
or cry out or raise his voice in the streets. What are we seeing
Today,
Yeah.
today? It's all about shouting and crying out
And a
raising
public
your voice.
spectacle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in the streets, and you've got these people with the megaphones, and everyone's a what do you call it? A wise is a prophet.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Prophet of wokeness, the prophet of anti-racism, all these people, and it's like it's almost talking about this
I
time.
think
Isn't it?
I've said it before, where Philip always says light does not make noise, it shines. Yes. You have to let people see Torah in your life. That's how we spread the word.
Be a
Preach the word.
witness.
Yeah, be a witness, that's right.
So-
What did you say, Sarah?
I was just going to say then, if that true light is shining from the light, then any darkness that comes in contact with it will flee and separate from that treasure that's sitting in that darkness.
Yeah. And you are then a co-creator in that person's life to bring them from darkness to light by speaking. Now, he says you bring justice to the nations. So the word bring is the word yatzah. That means to bring out, direct, to break out, bring forth, to carry out, to come abroad out, draw forth, to escape, and to utter. If you think about those meanings, I know it said you bring out justice, but it made me think about someone that's entrapped, either in a burning building or someone that's entrapped in the sea. You get the firemen who rescue them, and they carry them out. You get a lifesaver who then carry the people out of the sea. So it's all about the salvation act of bringing someone out of the place of danger and death into the place of life. That's the true purpose of a prophet, is to carry people back into life through whatever they do. It's not the other way around. It's not about them. It's not about what they can get. It's about what they can do. That's a salvation act for the benefit of the people that they serve on behalf of the king, because they're under the authority of the king. They're anointed by the king. They're appointed by the king to perform works of salvation and to speak words of salvation or words of creation. And where do we find the words of creation? It's the Torah. It's his word. Now, justice is the word mishpat. That means verdict, favorable or unfavorable. It's a sentence, a formal decree, divine law, penalty, justice, partitions, right of privilege, to be judged, judgment, justly, measure, ordinance, right, and sentence. So that word mishpat is also a word that's associated with a judge. It's only a judge who can make a mishpat, a judgment. And it's only a righteous judge that can make a righteous verdict. And part of the function of this judge is that he's also the savior. And he's the one who took the penalty upon himself. So even though the verdict is you have sinned, you need to die, he will say, but someone paid for your penalty. You are free, you can go. So he does not change his judgment. He changed the consequences. That's why it said that the penalty is nailed to the cross. Now people twist those words of Paul. They say that the law is nailed to the cross. No, it's the verdict, the mishpat, that is nailed to the cross, the consequence of your sin, not the law itself. The law is still pure. The judgment is still pure and true and will still hold, but the consequences have been released because he's got the authority to do that. Nations is the word goy. That means Gentiles, foreign nation, and heathen. Now what we saw that Paul said that they are his inheritance. They are the ones who need to be brought out. Now what's interesting about the word nations, it's also associated with the word west, and west is associated with the word sea, and the ocean or the sea is west of Israel. And it's always seen as the nations. And that's why the symbolism of the disciples on the boat fishing is to bring the nations out of the sea, out of the west, out of the entrapment that they're in, to rescue them and put them in the boat, which is the act of salvation. So that's where the goy are associated with fish. Also the Pisces, the age of Pisces, which has to do with the two fish, which is the age of the Gentiles, which is the age of grace and the age of salvation through the work of Messiah and the gospel message, is to bring people into the boat, so to speak. Now, changing gears, just going back to the symbolism of creation. Now, as you will note in the word Beresheet, there's no Aleph in the beginning. If you look at the Aleph Bet, Aleph is the first one. It means strength, it means ox. And it adds up to 26 if you construct it with two yods and a vav. That also adds up to Yod He Vav He, what you can see there. So the Aleph represents Yahweh. And what is also evident about 26, it's the attributes of a cube. If you count, yeah, salt is also a cube. A cube has, if you add up all the corners, all the surfaces, and all the edges and whatnot, it adds up to 26 attributes of a cube. The Holy of Holies is a cube. New Jerusalem is a cube. Salt's a cube. And so the Aleph represents that space, that is that place within which he created, which existed prior to Bereshit. And that space is also represented by the Bet, which is the house or the space in which he created everything. So that's just something interesting about the Aleph as well. Aleph, if you change the vowel points, it also means 1,000. So that we saw with 6,000 years and the 6 Alephs in the first 3 verses of Genesis 1, verse 1 to 3. And Aleph is also part of the Aleph Taf, which is the center of the first verse, the untranslated word, which represents Yeshua, the Aleph Taf, and also the Aleph Bet, because it's the first letter and the last letter of the Aleph Bet. So Aleph Taf is basically adding up all 22 letters, and every sound and every word you can make is contained within those 22 letters, which will make all those sounds, which are the words of creation. And they're all encapsulated within the concept of the Aleph Taf, which is Yeshua embodied, who is the Word, who's also the Creator, who spoke. And that's in the first verse. The Aleph, if you construct it with 2 yods and a vav, the 1 yod is in a divine realm, the spiritual realm, the lower yod is in the physical realm, and it stretches out, and the yod connects the 2, the top and the bottom, and it makes this beautiful tapestry, if you like. Last time we saw the vav with the tent. It's a similar concept here, where the Aleph also is similar to the letter Bet, creating that space or that plane or that canvas, so to speak, through which or on which Yahweh created. Now the right hand above represents Yahweh's hand, and the left hand is basically the hand of Messiah and also the hand of the prophets or the anointed people of Yahweh that can do his creative work or his work of salvation in the earth. Now the Aleph Bet, the Aleph is associated with the new moon. Now if you think for yourself, I've got a little picture here, 2 hands holding a vav. Vav is number 6. It's like the hands of a mother holding a baby. So whenever you see a new moon, it's the rebirth of the month. It's as if there's a newborn baby, a newborn cycle that's happening. And the moon is turning the gear work for the Moedim, or for the concept of time. And time has got an expiry date. Once we reach a certain point in time, the bondage of time will release us and we will access the higher realm, the top yod, so to speak. So the moon is evident in that, but the moon indicates cycles, and the cycles are cycles of rebirth, or there's a new beginning. There's a little Beresheet cycle happening in every new cycle. And they are also true for the festivals, for the Sabbaths, but they all link up with the moon. The Aleph Bet is the word Av. That means the originator or the father. We also always translate Av or Abba as father, but it's also translated as the originator or the origin of all things. Everything originated with him. Now, when you look at Bereshit, the Aleph is actually hidden behind it. Luckily, hidden Aleph there. And the hidden Aleph with the house is basically the father or the origin of everything that flows out of it. And the whole Torah flowed out of that bet, out of that house. And the house's name is Israel, the righteous people of Elohim. So if you want to access the house, you need to become part of Israel. And to become part of Israel, it's through the work of Messiah. And then you can engage with the house, with his recreation words, where you can eventually meet the Father, the Aleph Bet, but in the context of the house. That's why in Revelation, it says that they entered into the New Jerusalem. There are 12 gates. And the 12 tribes of Israel is how they entered the house, how they gain access to the presence of the Father, which is hidden within the house. So that's a beautiful word picture as well. When you place the first verse on the menorah pattern, it starts with a bet, it ends with the tzaddik, and it's got the aleph and the aleph taf in the middle. Just like you have light, darkness with words in the middle, you have words in the middle, and you have darkness, which is Bereshit, before creation. And the tzaddik at the end is the light. What does tzaddik mean? Righteous. Righteousness. Righteousness equals light. That is the purpose or the end goal of creation. And righteousness is the image of Yahweh, of the likeness of Yahweh. And that's the fulfillment of the final part of creation of humanity. What's interesting, the word Aleph, I've got Aleph here, that's how you spell Aleph, Aleph Lamed Pei. And Aleph, if you change the vowel points, it's the word Alof. That means uttered words. It's the same as to speak. Isn't that interesting? So I've got a little sound wave there that represents the words that's spoken, which is the Alof. And he spoke the Alof, which originate from Yahweh, because he is the Aleph. He is the origin of all uttered words that's connected to the bet that makes the Father, and then all the words of the Torah flowed from him, but they originate from the hidden Aleph behind, which is the Alof. Connected to the Taf also means death, which is Muth, which has to do with his likeness. And Yeshua was the one, the Aleph Taf, who died. He carried the cross, he carried the stake. He's the one who carried the yoke, who prepared the land, who put his hand into creation, who did the hard work in order to restore those who are entrapped in darkness, for the end result of the tzaddik, to make them all righteous. And that is the purpose of his creation, to make righteous people. So that basically concludes our study on Bereshit.
Is that all?
That's it. All for today.
It's interesting,
Yeah.
this is a bit off there, but the other, the swastika looks like a corruption of the other.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
It's a counterfeit of strength. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's
It's the anti-Aleph in the place of the Aleph, which is the spirit of the Antichrist.
Yeah, the Nazis are right into the occult.
Yeah.
The
The opposite.
deliberately chosen.
And that sign was gleaned from the Hindus.
The what?
Gleaned from the Hindus.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Takes you right back to that already.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I wondered why the Torah doesn't begin with that, because it's all. Yeah, now I understand. Yeah,
It does begin with the
it
other
does begin. Yeah,
because it's
But
uttered words
yeah.
that need to be spoken in the house and through the house into the world of darkness to separate the gems that are entrapped in Hades. Yeah, so it's a bit of a different view on creation. But we all go through this creation cycle ourselves. Even the 7 days of creation is the creation of humanity. It's also creation of you. So everything is true on different levels.
It's a pity our minds can't just grasp this and sit locked in. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Any questions? Comments?
I was just thinking about how when you get to the plants, is that day 4? I don't remember what day.
The day 3.
Day 3. Where he said let the plants come forth out of the earth instead of, you think of everything speaking into existence from nothing.
Yeah.
But they're already there. Yeah.
Seed,
That goes with
the gems that were already there.
And Adam was already in there. Adama.
The plants and everything was already in
The seed cannot die.
Yeah.
The right environment will make them sprout. So you had to separate the waters from the earth in order to create the right environment for them to come out. In the same way, I had to create the right environment for Adam, the seed, to sprout, to come out.
I think that's why Adam dominion over the earth and all creatures. Adam was the head of his.
Yeah, they both nefesh, and animals and humans are nefesh. They're of the same kind. But just thinking about if day 4, that's right in the middle of the menorah pattern, sun, moon, and stars depict time. So then everything on the right is spiritual. Day 1, 2, 3, and everything on the left, which is day 5, 6, and 7, is physical or trapped in time. Even the Sabbath is trapped in time. The festivals are trapped in time and under the dominion of the sun, moon, and stars. So that implies that plants are spiritual. If you leave anything to entropy, what will be destroyed and what will be left? Plants will just take over and just keep on growing because they've got something special in them that are more spiritual than us or animals.
It says even the rocks will cry out.
Yeah.
It shows how stupid they were. Even these rocks will cry out.
David Attenborough's Life on Our Planet, the last one, was talking about Chernobyl. Is that the place? Yeah. And he said, they said that there will never, ever, people cannot live there. No, behold, plants took over the place, and animals returned.
They are living there.
Even animals returned.
And it's strange, only one lady that is living there, you know that?
Yeah, I know.
Someone's ignored that.
She ignored it. She got faith.
Yeah, she still lives there.
So-
She's still alive.
And look what happens after bushfire, thinking of the, you know,
Yes.
the fire we're talking about, that, you know, that we're gonna be burned to hell or whatever. But after bushfire, well, it looks like nothing, it's like black, and then seeds. Yeah. It's interesting, that's the same pattern, that it can't change. It can't change who it is.
I think you can destroy all birds, all fish, all animals, all humans, but you can't destroy plants.
I find it interesting that he created the heavens and the earth, and the seed for the plants was already in the earth. He didn't create them; the seed was there in the beginning, and then he creates man from the earth, and the man's seed is already in.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You see why he gave man dominion over the plants and things, because it would just take over.
Yes, it would.
Yeah, then out of it, create beautiful gardens.
Yeah, even the concept of the garden,
Mm.
which represents the place of the dwelling place of Yahweh, is plants,
Yeah.
trees.
that's right, yeah.
Mm.
It's funny in the garden that, you know, been doing veggies for a few years, but we always let some of them just go to seed, you know, before we pull them out. And for example, lettuces, they can, well, you don't even know the seeds are growing yet. They can stay there for a whole year and they just wait for the right conditions. And then come up. Yeah, or any seed, you know, they'll be there. There's
You don't have to do anything.
no. And, but it's not like there's
It started in the garden
the,
and it ended in the garden
Mm.
when he defeated the enemy, because that's where he defeated the
when we
enemy.
would get
in the
seeds
garden.
to
That's right.
propagate, we would have to wash them.
And we will
because
return
there's
to
a
the garden.
time
We
thing
will
on the
return to the
outside
Inhibitor.
that tells the plant when to
Yeah,
germinate.
it's called an inhibitor.
It's
yeah,
like a,
yeah.
you know, like when you make chia seeds,
Yeah.
that gel,
Mm.
that's the seed inhibitor
The same with
of the
the
chia
same
seeds.
with the tomato seeds, the slimy bit, that's an inhibitor. But if you
So
wash
you
that
have
off,
to,
they'll
you have to,
germinate
like
straight
if
away.
it's just in the ground, it will,
Ah,
over time it will wear
So it
down
has a
and then it
time.
will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it
So
knows, it has,
interesting.
and each one is different,
Yeah.
they know the time, some sprout quickly, some take years.
Yeah.
And it's because they're created with this time thing. It's like they're in a time capsule.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same as human.
Yeah,
Human babies.
yeah, that's true. If they're all already
Yeah.
there somewhere, we've got some inhibitor to go into, and we've been chosen to come out to.
yeah, and women are born with all their seed in them.
Mm.
That's why you
Yes.
have your grandbabies in you. You've got your grandbabies and your babies. Your
Yes,
daughters
yes,
in
that's
you
true,
already.
yeah.
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 Think you born.
It's a-
Blows my mind every time I think about it. I'm thinking, oh my goodness. You had, you know,
Yeah.
you did.
Yeah. A potential.
Yeah, and that's following the same pattern.
Following the same.
Yeah.
That Adam was within Adamah,
Yeah,
which is Mother Earth,
Yeah.
yeah.
okay? In the womb,
Yeah.
in the water, waiting
Mm.
for the right conditions to be born.
Yes. That's right.
Pulled out with a healthy can formed and
Yeah, it's all holographic, same.
I saw a video of a cesarean birth where they pulled the whole baby amniotic sac out. And they just filmed the baby just swimming around still.
goodness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was amazing. Yeah.
See that.
Yeah, you can see.
Goodness.
Yeah.
And the other thing about seed is it said his word is like seed.
Yeah, that's right.
It's got power in itself to do what it's purposed to do.
Yes.
All it
that's
needs
right.
is the
Doesn't
right
matter.
condition.
Yes.
The DNA of the Father is embedded in his word, and if you speak it, Even if they reject it,
Yes.
it's
Come
in
out,
them.
it's still there.
Wait for the right conditions and it will bring forth fruit. So don't stop speaking. Seed is word.
But that's also what we said the other day. I think you said, Rachel, I said the same thing. It's not necessary that I remember everything that I've learned. No. But as soon when it's needed, that is when it comes out. Yeah.
Hidden in the
It's
heart.
hidden in the
Yeah.
story.
I think the Holy Spirit came to give you, it said when you walk before leaders and
But
emperors and
sometimes
stuff like
people
that.
are needed, that's what I come
Just the words what to say.
Yeah.
That's why I say the word it says.
I'm so late.
It's not necessary nowhere.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
No worries.
Yes.
Informative, my brother.
Yes.